Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Conlin. I'm a Master of Wine. I'm also the North American Ambassador for Château Ducru-Beaucaillou on the left bank of Bordeaux in Saint-Julien. And today I'm going to give you a report on the 2025 vintage. I was just at the Chateau for 3 weeks in April, speaking about the 25 vintage because in Bordeaux there is a system called en primeur, which is essentially selling the wine on futures, but you have a chance to taste this very young wine with the major critics, press, the buyers from around the world who all come to Bordeaux to taste the vintage. Now, I want to be clear that this is not a vintage report for the entirety of Bordeaux, not even for the entirety of the left bank or for Saint-Julien. This is specifically to Ducru-Beaucaillou. There are some wonderful vintage reports by major publications if you would like to read about the entire region, the left and the right bank. But this is about Château Ducru-Beaucaillou. So I will say this is an extremely aromatic vintage. It clocks in at about half a degree lower in alcohol than some other vintages of this nature because the 25 vintage was warm and dry, and I'll go through the whole year in just a moment. But in spite of having this wonderful freshness, aromatic, slightly reduced alcohol, it is extremely voluminous. So there is a high density to this. So the slightly lower alcohol has not impacted in any way the sort of beautiful concentration that was naturally caused during this particular vintage. So to go back a year, the 24 vintage was not an easy one. There was a lot of rain, and the buds are actually, their fertility is determined the year before, if that makes sense. So Ducru started the 25 year vintage already with reduced yields because of the poor bud fertility the year before. So you can almost think it like the buds are a baby in the embryo the year before, and the amount of sort of nutrients that they get is going to affect their strength when they actually are born. So we started already with much reduced yields. Then during flowering, we had coulure, which is the failure of the grapevine to properly pollinate. So that additionally reduced the yields. Heading into summer, it was very, very warm and dry. There was a lot of hydric stress, and what this did was create smaller berries with very high tannin potential. And you might think, well, it was warm, it was dry, how can you keep the freshness? There are multiple reasons, both what we did in the vineyard and just naturally because of the season. So even though it was very warm and dry, to speak in Celsius, there were many days that were over 35 degrees Celsius, which is quite warm. However, Ducru's positioning close to the estuary results in cooler nights. We also have the benefit of the Gunsian gravel, which is a sort of ancient gravel deposited by glaciers centuries and centuries ago, which allows the vines to find the water table in the Médoc. Additionally, the team at Ducru-Beaucaillou was very purposeful in this vintage. They did only minimal leaf thinning and only on the north and east facing parcels. The team also had been doing already a lot of work in the vineyard in terms of soil health. So they had introduced a good amount of humus or organic material into the soils. And the reason why that made a difference is humus has, it aerates the soil, it has good drainage capacity, which again can help the vines find that water table, but it also simultaneously has a great water retention quality. So all of this, plus combined with, this is not the first hot year, if you look at the last 10 years. So the vines also, they're smart. They remember what to do. So both because of the place, the vines, the soil health, and what the team did, the vines never shut down, even during this hydric stress. Right before we harvested, which began with the Merlot on September 2nd, there was a rain. And you'll hear this from other producers that some people picked before the rain, some picked during, picked after. We picked right after. This rain, which normally would not be ideal this close to harvest, actually came as a blessing in this vintage. It was enough to refresh the vines, to reduce any further loss of yield through dehydration, and just sort of freshen the vintage and without any loss of aromatics. So it actually was a blessing in the 2025 vintage. That September 2nd start to harvest was one of the earliest harvests on record for Ducru-Beaucaillou. Another comparable vintage would be 1945. So just to show how long it had been since we picked so early. But the thing to note also is although it was one of the earliest harvests, it also was one of the longest. So while we began early, the grapes that need additional ripening time, like the Petit Verdot for the Croix, let's say, or the Cabernet Sauvignon for the Croix and the Grand Vin, they had ample time to ripen at their very own pace and be harvested when they were exactly ready. I think this is an incredibly exciting vintage. It was such a pleasure to present this to everyone who visited us from around the globe. And what I will say is, it's also going to be a very, very small offering. We have about half as much wine as a normal year. So will be highly sought after, but you should seek it out because it is of exceptional quality and it's very thrilling.